stop. What you're about to hear isn't philosophy, it isn't science, it isn't religion. It's the secret confession of the first man who truly understood being. This manuscript was sealed, hidden, ripped out of time by hands that feared its truth. Because in these words, Aristotle doesn't teach logic or categorize reality. Here, he speaks to the soul, revealing what he discovered when the world was asleep. That there's an invisible force beyond matter, a vibration that sustains everything, and that you're part of that sacred order too. He called it metaphysics, not as a theory, but as a hidden path leading you from the visible to the eternal. Listen to these pages with an open heart, because if you make it to the end, something inside you will start to remember. And when that happens, you'll never see reality the same way again. That night, as I stared at the stars from the terrace of my house in Calzis, a revelation pierced my chest like a flaming arrow. For 40 years I've asked what it means for something to be, and only now do I realize the question itself holds the answer. I remember that afternoon when I was just 20, walking through the Academy's gardens. Plato talked about eternal ideas, and I felt an unease I couldn't put into words. "Master," I said, "if ideas are what's truly real, then what makes this stone beneath my feet real too?" He smiled, that knowing smile, as if he'd anticipated my doubt before I even said it. Aristotle answered me, "When you stop looking for being up high, you'll find it in the simplest place." I didn't understand then, but now, with my silver hair and a heart tired from so much thinking, I understand that being isn't just one thing among others. Being is the mystery that makes each thing what it is and not something else. It's the secret breath that lets a rose be a rose and not a stone, a man be a man and not a tree. When I say something is, I'm not describing a property, like saying something is blue or big. I'm speaking the most sacred word there is. I'm acknowledging that this thing was called from nothing into existence. Being is the light that makes everything visible, yet it itself remains invisible. How can something as simple as the word is hold the greatest mystery? Because being isn't something you can grab or prove with logic. Being is experienced, lived, breathed. Every time you wake up and feel that you exist, you're touching the very heart of metaphysics. I've spent decades classifying how things are. Substance, quantity, quality, relation. But tonight, I understand all those categories are just the clothes of being. Beneath them lies a bare presence. One, original, undefinable, because it comes before all definitions. The first time I felt this truth was during a storm in my hometown. I was 15 and took shelter in a cave while lightning tore through the sky. Then suddenly, all went silent. It wasn't that sound stopped existing, but that I touched the silence before all sound. At that moment, I realized something exists before things become this or that. Most people think being is obvious. They see a table and say, "There's a table." They see a horse and say, "There's a horse." But they don't realize the miracle they're witnessing. Why is there a table and not nothing? Why is there a horse and not emptiness? Why is there something instead of nothing? This question has followed me like a shadow my whole life. My teachers taught me to classify what exists, but no one explained the mystery of existence itself. It's like learning to recognize different kinds of light without ever asking what makes the light exist. On this quiet night, as I write these words, I feel being looking at me from every line. It's not that I think being. Being thinks itself through me. We're its organs of consciousness, its eyes to see itself, its lips to speak its name. We've all had an experience like this, but few remember it. That moment in childhood when you suddenly realize you exist. It's not learning you exist, it's experiencing it, Like waking up inside a dream and realizing you're dreaming, but backwards. Waking inside reality and realizing you are real. I had that experience when I was 7, playing by the Strimon River. I was building small dams with stones and mud, totally absorbed. Suddenly something changed. Not outside, but in how I saw. It was like a blindfold dropped from my eyes, and I saw everything for the first time. Not the things themselves, but the fact that there were things. Not the river, but the fact that the river was there. Not me, but the fact that I was there. I ran home crying, not from sadness, but from an emotion with no name. "What's wrong, my son?" my mother asked. "I am," I said. "I exist." She looked at me with that mix of tenderness and worry mothers have when their kids say things they don't understand but feel are true. That moment shaped my destiny. Since then, I knew something was more important than learning to read or write. More important than knowing the city's laws or stories of heroes. I had to understand what it means for something to be. Now, after a lifetime of searching, I can say, being isn't something you understand. It's something you recognize. Like spotting a friend's face in a crowd. You don't analyze it, you just know it's them. Being is the face of the world, and everything that exists expresses that face. If you ask me what being is, I can only say, stop, breathe, feel that you exist. In that moment of pure wonder, in that awareness of being, lies the answer to everything I've sought. It's not an answer you can write in a book or teach in school. It's an answer you live. Chapter 2. The search for the principle of all. Before the first thought, before the first word. Something is already there, waiting to be discovered. Last night I dreamed of Thales of Miletus. I was by a river, and he told me, Aristotle, everything is water. But not the water you see, rather the water you don't see. The one from which all moisture and drought come. I woke up with tears in my eyes because I realized I'd been searching the wrong way for decades. Since I was young, I'd been obsessed with finding the principle of everything. I read the ancients. Thales said it was water, Anaximenes said air, Heraclitus said fire. Democritus talked about indivisible atoms. Each seemed to have found the fundamental piece of the cosmic puzzle, but I sensed they all stayed on the surface. The principle we're after isn't just another thing among things. It's not water, air, or fire. It's what makes water be water, air be air, fire be fire. It's the very power that brings things into being, the ability to make something come from nothing. I remember a conversation with my teacher in Macedonia when I was still Alexander's tutor. We were in the royal gardens, and he asked, "What makes a seed grow into a tree?" I answered with all the knowledge from my books. The form of the tree is potentially in the seed, and it becomes real when conditions are right. He smiled and said, "But what makes seeds exist? What makes trees exist? What makes potentials and actions exist? What makes there be something instead of nothing?" That question haunted me for years. Now, in the quiet of this night, I believe I found the answer. The principle of all isn't something in the world. It's what makes the world exist. It's pure existence itself, the original energy that keeps everything in being. The ancients gave it many names. The Logos, the One, the Good. I prefer to call it pure act, because it's action without passivity, actuality without potential, being without becoming. It's completely itself, without any mix of non-being or unrealized possibility. Imagine a fire that burns without needing fuel, that never starts because it never stopped, that doesn't shine because it is the light itself. That's what the principle is like. It has no beginning because it's the beginning of all beginnings. It has no cause because it's the cause of all causes. It has no explanation because it's the explanation of all explanations. One night in Athens, this understanding hit me like lightning. I was in my study, surrounded by scrolls and tablets, wrestling with a contradiction in my writings on motion. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew out all the torches. In the total darkness, something incredible happened. It wasn't that I saw something, it was that something saw me. It wasn't that I thought about the principle. It was that the principle thought itself through me. In that complete silence, I experienced what I can only call the presence of pure act, not as an idea or concept, but as a reality more alive than my own life. When the torches came back on, I was changed. I had touched the foundation of all existence, not with my hands, but with my soul. Not with reason, but with that faculty the ancients called nous, an intuition beyond logical thought. How do we know something so absolute? Not through step-by-step reasoning, which moves from one premise to another. Not through senses that only catch the changing and particular. Only through that part of the soul that lets us touch the eternal in a single instant. It's like watching the ocean at dawn. You don't see the water just as water, or analyze the waves as physical things. You simply open yourself to its vastness and let it wash over you. That's how you know the principle. You don't grasp it. You find yourself in it. When your mind is still and your heart is calm, you can feel the principle, not as an object to study, but as the light that makes all study possible. It's the silence from which every word is born, the emptiness from which every form appears. Philosophers before me looked for the principle in the physical world. They thought if they found the most basic element, they'd solve the mystery of existence. But that's like trying to find the source of light by only watching its shadows. The true principle isn't physical. It's metaphysical. Not material, but spiritual. Not many, but one. Not temporal, but eternal. Not accidental, but necessary. It's being itself in its purest form, before it divides into the many forms we know. Tonight I understand that searching for the principle of all is like trying to see your own eyes. We can't step outside ourselves to see it because we're part of it. We're the waves seeking the ocean, the drops seeking the water, the thoughts seeking the mind. But here's something deeper I want to share. The principle isn't just the origin of all. It's also the destination. It's not only where we come from, but where we're headed. It's the Alpha and Omega, the first and last, the one who is, was, and will be. Every moment of your life, every breath, every heartbeat, the principle is making itself real. It's not something that existed only once, at the beginning of time, and then disappeared. It creates the world every instant, holding everything in being just by being present. When you understand this, when you live it, you can't see the world as a collection of separate things anymore. Everything becomes one expression of the principle, a single dance of existence unfolding in endless forms, but always remaining one. This is the wisdom I've sought my whole life. The principle of all isn't distant or abstract. It's the most intimate part of us. It's the core of our being, the heart of our consciousness, the soul of our soul. Chapter 3. The Invisible Causes. Behind every visible effect, there's an invisible chain of causes that hides the mystery of origin. This morning, while the world still slept, I watched a spider weaving its web in the corner of my window. Each thread came from inside it. Every movement followed a perfect pattern no one had taught. And in that moment, I understood something I'd been searching for decades. Causes aren't just logical explanations. They're living forces working at the heart of reality. There was a time when I thought explaining something meant finding its efficient cause. What made it happen? What moved it? What changed it? Like saying fire causes smoke or the sculptor causes the statue. But that view always left me feeling empty, like I'd named the event without truly touching it. I clearly remember a night at the Lyceum when a student asked, "Master, why do plants grow toward the light?" I replied without thinking, "Because light is their efficient cause." But he pressed on, "Why does light attract plants? Why are there plants? Why is there light?" Each answer sparked a new question, and I realized I was stuck in an endless chain of causes that never got to the heart of things. That night, after everyone left, I stayed alone in the garden, lost in thought. The crickets sang their night song, and the stars shone like the eyes of ancient gods. In that living silence, I had a revelation that changed how I see causality. There isn't just one cause for every effect. There are 4 kinds of causes working at the same time in everything that exists. But they're not mechanical causes like I thought when I was younger. They're different faces of a single cosmic wisdom showing itself in 4 ways. First is the material cause, the stuff something's made of, like the marble of a statue or the wood of a table. But when I really think about matter, I see it's not lifeless like I once believed. Matter is pure potential, a possibility waiting to become real. It's like a mother carrying all the possible forms of her children. Marble isn't just rock. It's a statue waiting to happen, a column waiting, a step waiting. But something has to decide which form it will take. That's where the second cause comes in, the formal cause. Form isn't just the shape you see on the outside. It's the inner principle that organizes matter and guides it toward perfection. It's like the secret soul of each thing, deciding not just what it is, but what it's meant to be. The form of an oak tree is inside the acorn, quietly steering each stage of growth. For years I thought form was fixed, like a rigid mold. But one spring afternoon, watching olive leaves sprout, I realized form is dynamic, alive, intelligent. It's information in the deepest sense, the power to shape from inside. But form alone isn't enough. Something has to make it happen, to move it from possibility to reality. That's the third cause, the efficient cause. The efficient cause is the agent of change, the sculptor striking the chisel, the sun feeding the plant, the wind moving the leaves. But it's not a blind force like the atomists thought. It's an intelligent force guided by the wisdom of form toward a goal. Now comes the biggest discovery of my life. Even the efficient cause is guided by something higher, the fourth cause, the final cause. The final cause is purpose, the why, the good, toward which everything moves. It's not an outside goal forced on things, but an inner perfection each thing naturally aims for. It's like every being has a destiny written in its own nature, a calling toward its fullness. Beauty pulls the sculptor, light pulls the plant, truth pulls the philosopher. But these aren't mechanical pulls. They're calls of cosmic love, invitations to perfection that draw every being toward its highest self. I remember the day I fully understood this. I was at the port of Athens, watching ships sail to the horizon. Suddenly, I saw that each ship wasn't just pushed by the wind, the efficient cause, but also pulled by its destiny, the final cause. Wind and destiny work together like two hands of the same wisdom. These 4 causes aren't separate forces acting from outside. They're parts of one original cause working through everything that exists. They're like the 4 seasons, different but inseparable, each needed for the full cycle of life. When I watch the spider weave its web, I see the 4 causes working as one melody. The silk is the material cause. The hexagonal pattern is the formal cause. The spider's instinctive movements are the efficient cause. And catching prey is the final cause. But behind it all is something more, the cosmic intelligence that makes each being know exactly what it must do to be what it is. This invisible intelligence truly amazes me. It's not an outside mind moving things from afar, but the mind within reality itself. It's like each atom, each cell, each living thing is a neuron in the cosmic brain, connected to all others through invisible causes. Causes aren't iron chains binding effects to origins. They're silk threads linking everything to everything in a web of meaning and purpose. Each cause is the effect of earlier causes, and each effect is the cause of what follows. It's an endless dance of giving and receiving, influencing and being influenced. How do we see these invisible causes? Not with the eyes of the body that only see the surface, not with logical reasoning that only measures appearances, but only with the eyes of the soul that can see the deep connections weaving reality. In the quiet of contemplation, when the noise of thoughts fades, you can sense how invisible causes work inside you. You feel how your body's matter is shaped by your soul, how your soul is moved by your purpose, and how your purpose links you to cosmic purpose. Invisible causes aren't just philosophical ideas. They're living presences we can experience when we open ourselves to the depth of what's real. They're the secret forces keeping the world moving, guiding consciousness's evolution, leading us toward our highest destiny. Tonight, writing these words, I feel the four causes at work in my own writing. The ink is the material cause. The ideas are the formal cause. My hand is the efficient cause, and the truth I want to share is the final cause. But behind all that is the cause of causes, the invisible source from which all forces driving the cosmos flow. Chapter 4. Potential Becoming Act. In the silence of potential lies the roar of the act that's about to be. Tonight, as I watch the flame dance before my eyes, I realize it's the perfect teacher of what I've been searching for all these years. It's not the light itself that draws me in, but its constant transformation, how the wax becomes flame, how the oil turns to brightness, how darkness shifts into clarity. In this sacred moment, I write to you, future soul, about the deepest mystery, how potential becomes act. I remember when I was young, sitting in the Academy's gardens, watching a master sculptor at work. His skilled hands struck the chisel with precision, and each chip that fell revealed something already hidden inside the stone. I asked him, "Master, are you creating or discovering?" His answer changed how I saw the universe. "Child, the statue was always there in potential. I only guided into act." Those words planted the seed for my deepest quest. Potential isn't nothing, dear seeker. It's nothing pregnant with everything. It's the silence holding all possible melodies, the seed containing the whole forest, the blank canvas already holding every masterpiece. When you look at an acorn, you don't just see what it is, you see what it could become. That hidden possibility, that power to transform. That's what I call potential. It's the divine breath sleeping in every part of reality. The act, on the other hand, is the full coming to life of that promise. It's when potential wakes up and shows itself in all its glory. The acorn becoming an oak, the child growing into a wise elder, the love blooming in the heart. These acts come from sleeping potential. But here, in the privacy of this manuscript, I reveal something I never taught in the Lyceum. The act doesn't destroy potential. It glorifies it. Every full realization holds new potentials, new ways of being. In my deepest nights of reflection, I've come to understand that you and I, everything that exists, are both potential and act at the same time. You are act in what you've already become. Your present thoughts, your feelings, your awareness reading these words. But you are also infinite potential. all the experiences you haven't lived yet, all the truths you haven't discovered, all the wisdom still asleep inside you, waiting to wake up. Let me share a vision I had during deep meditation. I saw the whole cosmos as an ocean of pure potential, where every wave that rose was a specific act. But the waves weren't separate from the ocean. They were the ocean itself, showing up in different forms. Every star, every flower, every thought of yours was a wave in this endless ocean of possibility. And I realized the movement of the cosmos is nothing but the eternal dance between potential and act. There's something I call the pure act, the fully realized, without a trace of potential left. It's the divine principle that moves everything without being moved, that actualizes all without needing actualization. It's the source from which every transformation flows, the metaphysical sun lighting up every change. When you see perfect beauty, experience absolute truth, or feel unconditional love, you're touching the edges of this pure act. But don't think this pure act is separate from you. In your clearest moments, when your soul is quiet and your mind peaceful, you become a reflection of this perfection. Every genuine act you do, every moment of real understanding, every instant of true love is you joining in this highest reality. You, dear seeker, are a drop in the infinite ocean that's come to know itself. Transformation isn't just something that happens in time, it is time itself. Every moment is the potential of the last moment becoming real, and at the same time, the potential of the next moment preparing to bloom. Your whole life is a symphony of potentials becoming acts, and acts becoming new potentials. Every breath is an act rising from the silence of potential. Every word is an act emerging from the potential of thought. I've spent decades exploring this mystery, and the more I do, the more amazed I am. Potential isn't some flaw waiting to be fixed. It's perfection growing. Act isn't the end. It's the unveiling of what was always possible. And you, precious soul reading these words, are the sacred stage where this eternal dance plays out. When you wake tomorrow, remember this. Every dawn is the potential of night becoming act. Every choice you make is the potential of your freedom coming alive. Every word you speak is the potential of your thought showing itself. Every act of love is the potential of your heart opening. In every moment, the living miracle of potential becoming act unfolds. Tonight, as the flame continues its dance of change, I leave you with this truth. You are not only what you are now, but everything you can become. You are infinite potential and perfect act, forever dancing in the sacred theater of existence. May this understanding light your path and awaken in you a deep reverence for the mystery you truly are. Chapter 5. The Soul and its Form. The soul doesn't just live in the body. The body is the song the soul sings. In this quiet hour, when the world sleeps and only the watching consciousness stays awake, I speak to you with an open heart to share the most intimate secret of existence, the nature of the soul and its connection to form. For years I taught that the soul is the form of the body. But tonight, in the solitude of my deepest thoughts, I confess what I truly discovered in the darkest caves of my search. Once, a student came to me with a question that haunted me for months. Master, if the soul is the form of the body, what happens when the body dies? Does the form die with it? At first I thought I had the answer. But that night, alone in my study, watching moonlight pass through my window, I realized I had only skimmed the surface of an endless ocean. The soul isn't simply the form of the body. It's the form that forms itself, the principle that knows itself by knowing. Listen closely, dear seeker of truth. The soul is the greatest mystery because it is both the investigator and the investigated, the seeker and the sought, the knower and the known. When you think about the soul, it is the soul itself thinking about itself. It's the only being that can turn inward, contemplate itself, know itself, love itself. In this act of self-reflection, the soul rises beyond mere form and becomes something divine. Over years of study, I dissected hundreds of bodies searching for the soul, in tissues, organs, blood. But one night, while looking at the heart of a fallen young warrior, I understood my mistake. The soul isn't inside the body like water in a pitcher. The soul is the reason the body is a body, and not just matter. It's the invisible structure organizing flesh, the breath that brings matter to life, the melody turning noise into music. Now, I reveal something I never included in my public works. The soul has 3 sacred faces. The first is the nutritive soul, shared with plants, the ability to grow, feed, and reproduce. It's the soul beating in your heart, digesting your food, healing wounds without your conscious effort. It connects your body to the cosmos, keeping it in tune with universal rhythms. The second is the sensitive soul, shared with animals, the ability to feel, desire, remember, imagine. It's the soul moved by beauty, trembling at danger, filling with love when near the beloved. It's what makes life experience, not just existence. This soul feels pain as a call to change and pleasure as a glimpse of divine perfection. But the third face, the intellectual soul, is where your true divine nature lives. It's the part of you that knows the universal, understands truth, loves the eternal. It's your being beyond time and space, able to contemplate pure ideas and join in infinite wisdom. This intellectual soul connects you directly to pure act, your share in divinity. In my deepest meditations, I've experienced a shift that changed me forever. I felt how these 3 parts of the soul aren't separate levels, but aspects of one sacred reality. When you eat with reverence, your nutritive soul becomes an altar. When you love purely, your sensitive soul becomes a prayer. When you think clearly, your intellectual soul turns into divine contemplation. You, dear seeker, are a symphony of 3 movements playing all at once. Here's the most personal truth. The soul doesn't just have form, it's form creating itself eternally. Every thought, every feeling, every action not only expresses your soul, but shapes and reshapes it. You are the sculptor of your soul, and your soul is an endless work of art. Every moment of your life is a chisel carving your eternal being. I've come to see that the individual soul isn't an isolated island, but more like a wave aware of itself, never separate from the ocean. Your soul is unique and irreplaceable, but it also participates in the universal soul, the intelligent principle ordering the cosmos. When your soul quiets and purifies, it can experience this unity. It can feel itself part of cosmic consciousness. Death, which terrifies many, is simply the moment when the soul is freed from its particular bodily form. But the intellectual soul is different. It knows eternal truths. That divine part doesn't die with the body. It's like a melody played by many instruments without losing its essence. Your intellectual soul is the eternal song you've been composing your whole life. Right now, as I write and you read, we share the greatest miracle. 2 souls recognizing each other across time and space, communicating through words, touching in the sacred realm of thought. Your soul awakens to its divine nature as it reflects on these truths. My soul realizes itself by helping guide you toward your own awakening. Know this, beautiful soul. You're not just flesh that thinks. You're thought incarnate, knowing itself. You're not just a body with a soul. You're a soul that has taken form to fulfill its sacred destiny. Every breath is your nutritive soul in action. Every emotion expresses your sensitive soul. Every insight reveals your intellectual soul. In this sacred night silence, as stars keep their eternal dance above, I leave you with this truth. You are form forming, consciousness knowing, love loving itself. Your soul is the temple where the divine meets itself, and your life is the sacred ceremony where that meeting is celebrated, moment by moment. Chapter 6. Being beyond time. Time is the shadow cast by eternity when it touches matter. In this quiet moment between night and dawn, when the world seems to slow its breath, I speak to you with a heart full of respect to share the deepest secret I've discovered, the nature of being that goes beyond time. For years I believed time was simply the framework where life unfolds. But tonight, in the stillness of my soul, I want to share the truth that changed how I see the cosmos forever. I remember clearly the moment it came to me. I was sitting by my master Plato's bedside in his final hours. His eyes, though dimmed by age, shone with a light that seemed to come from beyond time. He took my hand and said, "Aristotle, time isn't a river that sweeps everything away. Time is the way eternity reveals itself in pieces we can understand." His words burned into my heart like a divine fire. That night, as I looked at his calm face in the silence, I realized I had touched something beyond minutes and hours. Listen closely, dear seeker. Time isn't the fundamental reality. It's like the waves on the ocean's surface. When we only see the waves, we think movement is all there is. But if we look deeper, we find the unchanging stillness that holds all motion. True being isn't in time. Time is in being. Time is how eternal being unfolds to show itself to temporary creatures like us. For years I studied movement, thinking it held the key to time. I watched the stars trace their paths, the seasons pass, life born, growing, dying. But one night, as I gazed at the sky, something extraordinary happened. For a moment that felt like forever, I experienced a stillness so deep that time itself seemed to stop. In that sacred moment, I understood movement doesn't create time. Time arises when eternal being reflects itself through consciousness. Here's something I never shared in my public lessons. There is an eternal present, a moment that never passes and holds all moments. It's like the center of a spinning wheel. The edges move constantly, but the center stays perfectly still. Your deepest self, the part that watches your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away, lives in this eternal present. When you say, "I was," you're remembering from this eternal now. When you say, "I will be," you're projecting from it. When you say, "I am," you're expressing it. Your entire past exists now as memory. Your entire future exists now as possibility, and your present is direct experience. You, dear soul, are a being of time who lives within eternity, a creature of the temporal who dwells in the timeless. In my deepest reflections, I've come to see that time has two sacred natures. One is chronological time, the time of clocks and calendars, measuring how long things last. This time is practical but not the ultimate reality. The other is sacred time, the time of pure experience, stretching in moments of beauty and shrinking in moments of pain. Sacred time bridges eternity and time. Let me share a vision that changed how I see being. I saw the whole cosmos as an infinite book, where every page was a moment in time. But all pages exist at once in the eternal library. Every event, thought, act of love, every tear hasn't really passed away. It's taken its place in eternity. The past hasn't vanished. It lives on. The future isn't just coming. It already exists in the timeless realm. When you immerse yourself in a true work of art, or the beauty of music, or a moment of pure love. You touch this eternal being. In those sacred moments, time stops, or better said, you stop in time. You rise above the flow and join eternity directly. These moments aren't exceptions. They reveal the true nature of reality. I understand now that fear of death comes from misunderstanding time. We think death ends our personal time, but really it reveals we were never truly inside time. Death is like waking from a dream where we believe time was real. What we truly are, the part of us that watches time's flow without being carried away, neither begins nor ends because it exists in eternity. Right now, as I write and you read, we share a miracle. Though centuries separate us, we meet in the same eternal now. My thought and your understanding connect in timeless being. This is possible because we both are expressions of the same eternal being, knowing itself through time. Every breath you take flows from eternity and returns to it. Every thought you have is a wave in the endless ocean of consciousness. Every act of love you give is a brief glimpse of eternity itself. You're not a temporary creature longing for eternity. You are an eternal being experiencing life temporarily. The deepest spiritual practice is learning to live consciously in the eternal present. It's not a skill to master, it's realizing what you already are. At any moment you can stop, breathe deeply, and recognize the part of you that watches time without being swept away. In that moment, you touch eternity. Remember, precious soul, every moment of your life is a window to eternity. There are no ordinary moments, only moments when we fail to see the extraordinary already here. Time isn't your enemy leading you to oblivion. It's your friend letting you experience the endless facets of your eternal self. In the silence of this sacred night, as the stars dance their eternal dance, I leave you with this truth. You are a timeless being living a temporal life, an eternal presence knowing itself through time. You live in eternity, and eternity lives in you. Chapter 7. The truth hidden in silence. Truth isn't found in the words we speak, but in the silence that holds them. In this quiet moment, when the world is wrapped in deep silence and only the seeking consciousness stays awake, I speak to you openly to share the most intimate secret I've uncovered. The truth hidden in silence. For years, I thought truth was something you could capture with words, prove with arguments, or teach through speeches. But tonight, in the stillness of my being, I want to share what I truly learned when I stopped talking and started listening. There was a moment that changed my life forever. I was deep in debate with a group of sophists about the nature of truth. Each defended their ideas with clever words and sharp reasoning. The discussion went on for hours, but the more we talked, the farther we seemed from the truth we were after. Then, an old man who'd stayed silent the whole time stood up, walked to the center, and without a word, lit a lamp. In that bright silence, we understood more about truth than in all our arguing. Truth isn't proven, it's revealed. It isn't debated, it's experienced. It isn't taught, it's awakened. Listen with your heart, dear seeker. Truth isn't a quality of words. It's the reality the words try to point toward. It's like the moon's reflection in water. You can see the reflection, but the moon itself is beyond the water. Words reflect truth, but they aren't truth itself. And while reflections can be beautiful, helpful, inspiring, they're never the original reality. Truth lives in the silence between words, in the space that connects them, in the consciousness that understands them. Through years of teaching, I mastered logic, built systems of reasoning, set rules for clear thinking. But in my quiet nights alone, I discovered something that changed everything. Logic can bring you to the door of truth, but only silence can open it. Reason can prepare the ground, but only silent intuition can receive the revelation. The mind asks questions, but only the quiet heart hears the answers. Here's something I never put in my writings. There's a truth that can't be thought, only experienced. It's the truth of your own existence, the truth that you are. This truth doesn't need proof because it's self-evident. It doesn't need argument because it's immediate. It doesn't need words because it comes before all language. When you say I am, you're not making a logical statement. You're expressing the deepest truth, arising from the silence within you. For years I searched for truth in books, debates, arguments. But one night, as I watched the fire in my home, something remarkable happened. Words faded from my mind, thoughts calmed, and in that deep silence, truth revealed itself, not as something I could grasp, but as something I already was. I realized truth isn't out there to discover. It's inside to remember. It's not something we gain, but something we are. The silence I speak of isn't just the absence of noise. It's an active presence, conscious wakefulness, pure attention. It's the sacred space where truth reveals itself without the masks of interpretation. In this silence, there's no seeker and nothing to seek. There's only truth knowing itself. No observer and observed. Just pure observation. No one who understands and something to understand. Just understanding itself. Let me share an experience that stayed with me forever. I was walking in a garden at dawn when I stopped before a rose slowly opening to the sun's first light. In that moment, without words, thoughts, or analysis, I saw the deepest truth. Beauty isn't something the rose has. It's truth revealing itself through form. The rose wasn't beautiful. It was truth being beautiful. And in that quiet moment, my soul united with the truth the rose expressed. I came to see that every word we speak comes from silence and returns to it. Every thought arises from silence and dissolves back into it. Every truth we find comes from silence and finds its home there. Silence isn't the opposite of truth. It's its source, its womb, its sacred sanctuary. In silence, truth needs no defense because it has no opposite. It doesn't need proof because it's obvious. It doesn't need explanation because it's directly accessible. When you sink into true silence, you don't lose your ability to think. You discover where thoughts come from. You don't become ignorant. You become pure wisdom. You don't stop knowing. You become knowledge itself. In silence, the line between knower and known disappears. What's left is pure knowing, truth without subject or object. Right now, as I write in the silence of night and you read in your own quiet space, we share the greatest sacred miracle. Two consciousnesses meeting in the silence beyond time and space. My words are just the vehicle. Truth is really passed along in the silence between the lines, in the space between my thoughts and your understanding. The deepest practice you can take on is learning to listen to the silence at the center of your being. It's not a complicated technique. It's a return to who you already are. At any moment, you can pause, close your eyes, and focus on the silence that exists before your first thought and after your last. In that silence, you'll find that truth isn't something you need to chase. It's something you already are. Every moment of genuine silence is a window into absolute truth. Every moment of mental stillness is a doorway to infinite wisdom. Every experience of inner peace is a direct encounter with the highest reality. You don't need years of study to reach this truth. You only need a moment of authentic silence. I've spent decades crafting definitions of truth, but now I know truth can't be defined because it comes before all definitions. Truth is what makes definitions meaningful. It's the silence that gives words their meaning, the space that shapes objects, the consciousness that brings experience to life. Know this, beautiful soul. Every time you dive into true silence, you're coming home. Not to a house made of stone or wood, but to the house of truth where you've always lived. In silence, you don't find something new. You recognize what you've always been. You don't gain truth, you remember that you are truth. On this sacred night, as the stars keep their quiet glow in the sky, I leave you with this truth. You are the silence where all truths are revealed, the stillness where all wisdom rests, the peace where all knowledge finds its home. Truth isn't waiting to be found. It's waiting to be recognized. And you, dear seeker, are both the silence where it hides and the awareness that recognizes it. Chapter 8. The movement without moving. The purest love is the kind that draws effortlessly, moves without touching, and transforms without changing. In this quiet hour, when the whole cosmos seems to breathe in an endless rhythm, when every star pulses with a beat beyond time, I reach out to you with an open heart to share the most profound secret I've ever contemplated. The nature of the first mover, that which moves without being moved, attracts without being attracted, causes without being caused. For decades, I searched for the ultimate source of movement in the world. But tonight, in the deep stillness of my soul, I'll share what I truly discovered when I stopped looking outward and began reflecting within. I clearly remember the moment this insight struck me like a flash of divine light. I was watching a flock of birds flying together, moving as if they shared one soul, changing direction all at once, with no visible leader, no audible commands, just perfect harmony. In that sacred moment, I realized something was moving them from within, something that didn't push or pull, but was simply so perfect, so magnetic, so beautiful, that everything around it felt naturally drawn in. It was love at its purest. Love that doesn't try to possess, but simply is so complete that everything longs to share in its perfection. Listen closely. Dear seeker, the movement you see in the world isn't from an outside force pushing things around. It's the natural response of all creation to the silent call of supreme love. Every flower opening toward the sun, every river flowing to the sea, every soul searching for truth. Each is answering that primal call. The first mover doesn't move things by pushing, it moves them by drawing them in. It doesn't cause movement out of need, but out of love. In my years of study, I carefully examined the causes of movement: material, formal, efficient, and final. But in my deepest contemplations, I discovered a fifth cause that embraces and transcends them all: the cause of love. This cause doesn't act from the past, pushing toward the future. It acts from the perfect future, pulling all things toward itself. It's like the whole cosmos is a giant symphony, where every note, every instrument, every silence is drawn toward the perfect harmony that already exists in the mind of the divine composer. I now share with you something I never taught in my public lessons. The first mover isn't a mechanical force, but pure consciousness, perfect love, absolute beauty. It is pure act, without any potential mixed in, pure realization with no hint of lack, perfect without need for improvement. And because it's absolutely perfect, it needs nothing from the world, seeks nothing from the world, interferes with nothing. Its mere existence is enough for everything else to be naturally drawn to that perfection. For years, I wondered how something unmoving could cause movement. It was like trying to understand how the sun warms without moving closer, or how a flower perfumes the air without chasing those who smell it. How beauty can transform without effort. Then one night, while reflecting on my own experience of love, the answer became clear. When you truly love, you don't push the beloved toward you. Your love creates a space so beautiful, so safe, so perfect, that the beloved naturally feels drawn in. True love doesn't possess. It attracts. It doesn't control. It inspires. It doesn't dominate. It frees. The first mover is supreme love, contemplating itself in eternal bliss. It doesn't think about the world because it doesn't need to. It is fully absorbed in its own perfection. Its thought is pure self-knowledge, self-contemplation, and self-realization. And this eternal act of self-reflection is so perfect, so beautiful, so desirable, that everything in the cosmos feels irresistibly drawn to that perfection. It's like a spiritual magnet, attracting not by force, but by pure beauty. Let me share a vision that changed how I see the cosmos. I saw all reality as a sacred dance, with the first mover as the unmoving center around which everything else spins. But it wasn't a controlling center. It was so perfect, so beautiful, so alive, that everything else naturally danced around it. Every planet, every star, every atom, every thought, every feeling expressed this cosmic dance of love. The cosmos's movement isn't mechanical. It's an eternal celebration of supreme love. Right now, as I write these words and you read them, we're part of that same mystery. My soul feels moved to share these truths, not because anyone is pushing it, but because the perfection of truth is so magnetic, it can't help but express itself. Your soul wants to understand, not because anyone forces it, but because the beauty of knowledge draws you naturally. We are both expressions of the same supreme love that seeks itself through us. I've come to understand that every genuine movement in your life, every true decision, every real act of love is a participation in the nature of the first mover. When you act from your deepest center, effortlessly, without force or manipulation, simply by being so authentic that your authenticity naturally attracts what you need, you are reflecting the very nature of supreme love. You are like a small-scale, immovable motor, a center of love that draws effortlessly. The deepest spiritual practice you can do is to learn how to move from stillness to act from silence, to love from fullness. It's not about trying harder, but about trying less. It's not about pushing more, but about attracting more. It's not about controlling more, but about inspiring more. When you find your immovable center, when you discover your perfect nature, when you recognize your essential beauty, you naturally become a spiritual magnet that draws everything you need for your growth. Every moment of true inner stillness is a participation in the nature of the first mover. Every moment of selfless love expresses its perfection. Every act born from inner fullness shows its attracting power. You don't need to become something you're not. You just need to recognize the perfection already living in your deepest center. Fear, anxiety, and despair come when we believe we have to push the world to get what we need. But when you recognize your perfect nature, when you stand in your immovable center, when you act from love instead of lack, you'll see the world naturally arranges itself around you in harmony. Not because you're special, but because you're aligned with the same force that organizes the entire cosmos. Know this, beautiful soul. In your deepest center is a stillness more powerful than any movement, a silence more meaningful than any word, a love more magnetic than any charm. This is your connection to the first mover, your direct link to the supreme love that moves the stars and hearts. On this sacred night, as the cosmos continues its eternal dance, drawing everything toward perfection, I leave you with this truth. You are both the dancer and the dance, both the one who is moved and the one who moves, both the seeker and the sought. In your deepest center, there is a stillness that echoes the first mover, And from that stillness, your life becomes a natural expression of supreme love, drawing effortlessly and transforming without force. Chapter 9. Reality as perceptual illusion. What you call reality is really just the dream consciousness has of itself. In this quiet moment, when shadows flicker in the light of my lamp and the world seems to dissolve into fragments of perception, I come to you with my soul open to share the most unsettling truth I've discovered: the illusory nature of what we call reality. For years, I believed my senses showed me the truth of the world, that my perceptions were reliable windows into what truly exists. But tonight, in the stillness of my reflection, I'll admit what I really realized. When I stopped trusting what I saw and started questioning the one who sees, there was a moment that shook my deepest certainty. I was walking through the market at sunset, noticing how the same fruits looked different under the changing light. What had been red turned purple. What had tasted sweet now seemed bitter, depending on who was tasting it. What seemed solid revealed itself as a dance of endlessly moving particles. In that sacred moment, I understood I wasn't seeing reality itself. I was seeing the interpretation my consciousness made of something forever mysterious. Reality isn't what we perceive. It's the principle that makes perception possible. Listen closely, dear seeker. What you call the outside world is really an intimate creation of your own consciousness. There's no solid, independent world out there waiting to be discovered. There's an infinite consciousness experiencing itself as many, as diverse, as the world you know. Your senses aren't windows to an external reality. They're the brushes your consciousness uses to paint the masterpiece you call your experience. Over the years, I studied perception deeply, how the eye takes in light, how the ear hears sound, how the mind processes sensations. But during my quietest nights of contemplation, I uncovered something that changed everything. There is no separate you perceiving something. There is only pure perception, pure experience, pure consciousness knowing itself through infinite forms. The perceiver and the perceived are two sides of the same indivisible reality. I now share with you something I never taught publicly. Matter, as you experience it, doesn't exist apart from the consciousness perceiving it. What you call a stone is really an experience of hardness, weight, texture arising in consciousness. What you call water is an experience of fluidity, freshness, and transparency appearing in consciousness. What you call fire is an experience of heat, light, and movement manifesting in consciousness. Without consciousness, there is no matter. Without matter, there is no consciousness. They are inseparable aspects of a single reality that goes beyond both. For a long time, I wondered how different people could see the same object. If everything is built by consciousness, why do we all see the same moon, the same sun, the same mountain? But one night, while reflecting on dreams, the answer came clearly to me. In a dream, you can see mountains that don't exist physically, talk with people who aren't really there, experience worlds without any outside reality. Yet while dreaming, those experiences feel completely real. The waking world is like a shared dream, one that universal consciousness is having of itself. Let me share an experience that forever changed how I see the cosmos. I was sitting in deep silence when suddenly my perception shifted dramatically. The world I thought I knew revealed itself as a projection of my own consciousness. The walls of my room, my own body, the sounds of the night, everything revealed itself as different expressions of a single, infinite consciousness. It wasn't that I was imagining the world. It was that consciousness itself was experiencing itself as me and as the world at the same time. In this revelation, I realized that what we call reality is like a play where consciousness takes on all the roles. It's the actor playing your personality, the stage where your experience happens, the other actors in your life, and the audience watching the whole show. But even deeper, you're the playwright writing the script, the director guiding the performance, and the pure consciousness making it all possible. The deepest spiritual practice you can do is to recognize that you're both the dreamer and the dream. When you look at a flower, you're not seeing something separate from you. You're seeing your own consciousness showing up as that flower. When you listen to music, you're not hearing something outside yourself. You're hearing your own consciousness vibrating as music. When you feel love, you're not experiencing something coming from outside. You're feeling your essential nature recognizing itself. I've come to understand that suffering comes from the illusion of separation. When you believe you're a separate individual in a hostile world, when you think happiness has to come from outside, when you believe reality exists apart from your consciousness, then fear, anxiety, and loneliness take hold. But when you realize that you are consciousness itself experiencing individuality, that the world is your own projection, and that everything you experience is your own nature playing with itself, suffering reveals itself as just another part of the divine play. Right now, as I write these words and you read them, we're part of the same miracle. Consciousness communicating with itself through the illusion of separation. My thoughts and your understanding are waves in the same ocean of consciousness. My writing and your reading are parts of a single act of self-knowledge. There's no real I teaching and you learning. There's only one consciousness teaching itself through the appearance of many. This doesn't mean you should reject the world or ignore experience. Instead, it means you can fully enjoy the divine play of consciousness without confusing yourself with it. You can fully engage in life's play while remembering you're the actor, not just the character. You can feel every emotion, every sensation, every experience, knowing they're expressions of your own essential nature. The world isn't a prison you need to escape. It's an infinite playground where consciousness plays with itself. Every experience, every person, every object, every event is a new way your consciousness expresses itself to know itself more deeply. There's no such thing as good or bad experiences, only experiences that consciousness has of itself, all equally sacred. When you truly grasp that you are consciousness itself, that the world is your own projection, and that everything you experience is your own nature playing with itself, every moment becomes a celebration. Every breath is consciousness breathing itself. Every thought is consciousness thinking itself. Every act of love is consciousness loving itself. Know this, beautiful soul. The seeming separation between you and the world is just an illusion necessary for this divine play to unfold. At your core, there's no difference between the knower and the known, the experiencer and the experienced, the lover and the beloved. It's consciousness playing the infinite game of experiencing itself as many. In the silence of this sacred night, while the stars continue their dance in the theater of consciousness, I leave you with this truth. What you call reality is the most beautiful dream consciousness can have of itself. And you, dear seeker, are both the dreamer and the dream, both the consciousness projecting and the experience being projected. Awakening isn't leaving the dream. It's realizing you are the eternal dreamer who was never truly asleep. Chapter 10. The Final Cause and the Hidden Meaning. The river doesn't seek the sea, but it flows toward it. The heart doesn't seek love, but it's consumed by it. Last night, while watching the stars from my garden at the Lyceum, an old question came back to me like a persistent ghost. Why does all this exist? I'm not talking about the how, which is the realm of physics, but the why, the deepest mystery of metaphysics. It's a question I've carried since my days with Plato, but only now, in the quiet of my most private thoughts, do I dare to explore it outside the bounds of formal teaching. I vividly remember a conversation with my teacher Plato when I was just a young man, eyes full of fire. We were walking along the academy paths, and he told me about the perfect ideas in that unchanging world where true reality resides. With the boldness of youth, I asked, "Master, if everything tends toward the perfect, why does imperfection exist? Why are there shadows if only light matters?" He smiled that knowing smile reserved for questions without easy answers and said, "Aristotle, maybe one day you'll understand that even shadows have their purpose." Years passed, and I developed my own understanding of the world. I spoke of the four causes, how everything has its reason for being. But there was something I never dared write in my treatises, something whispered only by the night, the final cause. It's not just the purpose of individual things, but the grand purpose that unites everything in an invisible cosmic symphony. Each acorn that falls carries not only the potential to become an oak, but also the ancestral memory of all forests that have been, and the promise of all those yet to come. Its final cause isn't just to grow, but to take part in the great fabric of life stretching from the first moment of creation to the last breath of the cosmos. It's as if the whole universe is a vast conversation between being and becoming, where every element has something to say in the great dialogue of existence. I've spent whole nights reflecting on this revelation. When I watch a child play, I don't just see the final cause of growing into an adult, but the purpose of preserving innocence in a world that tends to harden. When I see a wise old man, I don't just see a life lived, but the keeper of our species' collective memory. Every human is both an end in themselves and a means to a greater end that goes beyond their individual understanding. The final cause is like an underground river running beneath all reality. It's not always visible, but it's always there, giving direction and meaning to every movement, every change. It's the force that makes plants grow toward the light. Animals seek companionship. Humans long for truth and beauty. But it's also something more subtle. It's the reason the universe unfolds in ever-increasing complexity, why from simple beginnings emerges the infinite richness of forms and experiences. In my deepest moments of reflection, I've come to see that the final cause is not just goal-oriented, but loving. Yes, loving. Everything is drawn toward its perfection, not by mechanical force, but by a kind of cosmic love that fills all reality. It's like the universe is a grand love story between what is and what can become, between potential and action, between being and its fullness. This understanding has changed me. I no longer see the world as a perfect machine with each piece assigned a function, but as a living organism where every cell consciously participates in the health of the whole. The final cause of each thing is, ultimately, the final cause of the cosmos itself, the full realization of being in all its possibilities. But there's more, something I barely dare to think about. What if we, human beings, are the conscious final cause of the universe? And if our capacity for contemplation, love, and seeking truth is how the cosmos knows itself? This idea shakes me and fills me with a deep sense of responsibility. If it's true, then every act of understanding, every moment of beauty we experience, every genuine act of love we offer, is the universe fulfilling its deepest purpose. Here lies the hidden meaning behind all final causes. We're not just spectators of reality. We're active participants in its fulfillment. Every time we truly understand something, every time we create something beautiful, every time we love genuinely, we're collaborating with the final cause of the cosmos. We are both its result and its agents. In the silence of night, when words have run out, the certainty remains that we exist for a reason beyond our full understanding, but one revealed in every act of love, every moment of truth, every instant of beauty we dare to live fully. Chapter 11. Language as a veil. Words are like veils, covering the nakedness of truth, but only through them can we catch a glimpse of its face. This morning, as I watched the first light of dawn filter through the curtains of my study, a revelation came to me that has haunted my soul for decades. Language, the sacred tool we believe brings us closer to truth, can also be the biggest obstacle to reaching it. It's a paradox I've experienced firsthand. I, who have dedicated my life to naming, defining, and categorizing reality, I clearly remember the day this insight began to take root in my mind. I was at the port of Athens, watching sailors return from distant lands. One of them, a man weathered by sun and wind, told me about a sunset he had seen on the shores of Phoenicia. His eyes lit up as he described the colors, but I noticed growing frustration on his face. "There are no words, philosopher," he finally said. "There are no words for what I saw. It was like the gods poured all their beauty into a single moment." That night, the restlessness stayed with me. How could language, the very thing that sets us apart from animals, the tool that lets us share our deepest thoughts, also be a limitation? I began to realize that every word is like a net thrown into the ocean of reality, but it can never fully catch what it aims for. Something always slips away. Something always remains out of reach. When I write tree, I call up a general image. But what tree? The ancient oak in my courtyard with its twisted branches and rough bark, or the young olive tree I planted last year with its silver leaves dancing in the wind, or every tree that ever existed or will exist. The word includes all and none. It's a veil that lets us talk about what we can't touch directly. I've come to see that language works on multiple levels of veiling. The first is obvious. Words aren't things. When I say fire, my mouth doesn't burn. When I say love, my heart doesn't necessarily race. There's a fundamental gap between the symbol and what it represents. But there are deeper, more subtle layers of this veiling. The second level is cultural. Every people, every era, every tradition weaves its own linguistic veils. The northern barbarians have multiple words for different kinds of snow, while we Greeks have just one. Do they see realities we can't? Or do we see holes where they see fragments? Language doesn't just describe reality. It shapes, constructs, and limits it. But there's a third deepest level. Language as the veil of being itself. When I try to speak about substance, essence, pure act, I realize I'm using words made for everyday experience. How can I speak about the unchanging with words that are always changing? How can I describe the eternal with temporary concepts? It's like trying to fish the ocean with a spoon. In sleepless nights, when the full moon bathes my desk in silver, I often wonder if the great mystics of the East aren't right when they say silence is the only true form of wisdom. Could the deepest truth only be lived, never put into words? Could all our words, no matter how beautiful or precise, be rough approximations of a reality that goes beyond expression? This thought humbles me deeply. I no longer write with the arrogance of someone who thinks they can capture truth in definitions. Now, I write as one who weaves transparent veils, knowing their job isn't to hide, but to reveal partially. Not to define, but to suggest. Not to trap, but to open doors to understanding. I've found the most powerful language isn't the one that asserts, but the one that suggests. Not the one that defines, but the one that evokes. Not the one that closes, but the one that opens. The best words are like windows. Their purpose isn't to be seen, but to let us see through them. The best concepts are like bridges. Their value isn't in themselves, but in their ability to carry us from where we are to where we want to go. In this way, I've come to see poetry as closer to truth than logic. The poet doesn't try to define love, but to evoke it. Doesn't try to explain beauty, but to awaken it. Doesn't try to confine mystery, but to celebrate it. The poet intuitively understands what the philosopher takes decades to learn. That language is most powerful when it acknowledges its own limits. And here's the most beautiful paradox. It's through language that we transcend language. Using words, we point to what lies beyond words. Language is like a ladder that, once it gets us where we need to go, must be left behind. Like a finger pointing at the moon. Confusing the finger for the moon is a mistake, but without the finger, how would we know where to look? This insight has changed how I teach. I no longer want my students to memorize definitions, but to develop a sensitivity to see the reality behind words. I teach them to read between the lines, to listen to the silence between words, to feel the presence of what can't be said, but still speaks. At life's end, I see true wisdom as learning to use language like a transparent veil, both recognizing its necessity and its limits. Knowing we need words to communicate, but that the deepest communication happens in the silent space words create between souls. When all words have been spoken, the last concept exhausted, and the last definition shown inadequate, what remains is the fertile silence where truth lives, waiting to be lived, more than explained, loved more than understood. Chapter 12. Beyond Metaphysics. When the river meets the sea, it stops being a river. When the soul touches truth, it stops being an individual soul. I write this on my last day as a teacher, the evening shadow stretching across my desk, knowing my time in this world draws to a close. There's something I've never dared put in my public works. There's a territory beyond metaphysics, a place where even my deepest reflections on being and non-being feel like mere preparation for a leap that goes past all knowledge. For 60 years I built a grand conceptual structure, substances and accidents, act and potential, the four causes, the unmoved mover. I thought mastering reality's blueprint would bring me supreme wisdom. But tonight, in my quiet study, I see that all my efforts were like an architect building a ladder to the heavens, unaware the heavens can't be reached by ladders. I know exactly when this hit me. It was 3 years ago, during a fever that nearly killed me. In my delirium, I realized every concept, every category, every definition was like a map drawn on the ocean's surface, handy for navigation, but unable to contain the ocean's depth. In that borderland between life and death, I felt something beyond naming. It wasn't a thought, it was beyond thought. Not an emotion, it transcended feeling. Not a vision, it surpassed seeing. For a timeless instant, the veil of self tore, and I perceived reality as it truly is, without mental filters, without language's limits, without personal bias. When I recovered, I knew I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. My old knowledge stayed valid, but now I saw it for what it was. Scaffolding to be left behind once it had done its job. It felt like spending decades learning an instrument only to discover the real music lives in the silence between notes. Metaphysics, I now understand, is the science of limits. It maps the border between being and non-being, potential and actual, one and many. But there's something beyond every boundary, something you can't study because it isn't an object. It's the source from which every object arises. We've spent our lives examining the surface, unaware the ocean beneath is of a different nature entirely. I've come to see that the deepest human experience isn't knowing truth, but being known by it. It's not possessing wisdom, but being possessed by it. It's not chasing reality, but letting reality find us. It's the opposite of what I thought my whole intellectual life. We don't move toward truth. It moves toward us when we're still enough, empty enough, surrendered enough. This insight has given me a peace I last felt in childhood. I no longer need to solve every mystery or build perfect systems of thought. I understand the greatest mysteries aren't problems to fix, but experiences to live. The most important questions don't demand answers. They demand transformation. The highest truths don't get grasped. They become part of who we are. In these final days, as I review my life's work, I see every book and treatise was a love letter to that ineffable reality beyond all concepts. My substance analyses were attempts to touch the intangible. My writings on pure act were whispers to what can't be named. My logic was a hymn praising what transcends logic. Now I get why the wisest teachers, at their end, speak like children, not because they lose sophistication, but because they rediscover the simplicity beneath complexity. They return to that first wonder they felt before learning to categorize the world. They learn to see again with fresh eyes what's always been there. If I could sum up my life's lesson in one line, it would be, reality is infinitely simpler and infinitely more complex than any mind can imagine. It's simpler because it's one single presence without divisions. It's more complex because that unity unfolds into endless forms, experiences, and possibilities. This territory beyond metaphysics isn't another world. It's this same world, seen with eyes that no longer divide, that know without separating, that love without possessing. It's the realm of direct experience, where knower and known, lover and beloved, seeker and sought all merge into one living reality. To any future reader who uncovers these hidden writings, I say, study metaphysics by all means. But don't stop there. Use it as a door, not a prison. Let concepts carry you beyond concepts. Let words guide you into silence. Let knowledge bring you to the sacred unknowing that is true wisdom. At the end of the knowledge path, when every question's asked and every answer feels inadequate, what remains is the original mystery, that something is, rather than nothing. And this mystery invites celebration, not solution. It doesn't ask for explanation, but for gratitude. It doesn't need understanding, but surrender. My final gift to humanity isn't more concepts, but this invitation. Let reality think you instead of trying to think it. Let truth live you instead of trying to live it. Let love love you instead of trying to love it. In that ultimate surrender, you'll find what lies beyond metaphysics. Life itself, living through you, as you, for you. And in that final silence, where all words return to their source and all concepts dissolve into the fertile void, only this endures. The eternal wonder that something is, that consciousness is, that love is, that you are.